There have been many difficult periods in life, but there have also been some pleasant ones. My parents' deaths when I was a child left me with a deep, lingering sadness. However, I was fortunate to be taken in by the elderly William couple who lived next door. They were the sweetest folks, and instead of treating me like a burden, they treated me like their own grandson. The most important thing was that, despite our lack of wealth, we were wealthy in love. When they passed away in a vehicle accident just before my 20th birthday, and while I was considering attending college, everything changed. All of a sudden, I was alone once more. They left me money for their suburban home and school. I sold it because it brought up too many memories, despite the fact that it was full of them. I used the funds to purchase a modest apartment in the city, near the university where I planned to get a degree in financial management. It was at a friend's party that I met Michael. He was carefree, enjoyable, and indifferent to the opinions of others. We clicked immediately. He spilled my drink after inadvertently bumping against me. I was more shocked than irritated when I remarked, "Hey, watch it." "All right, my bad," he added with a smile. "I'll take care of that." "What did you drink?" He said, "2 beers coming right up." When I replied, "Just beer." That was Michael, uncomplicated, direct, laid back. All night long, we discussed everything and nothing. We discovered that while we both like old movies, we detested sushi. He was pleasant to talk to, and I didn't want to say goodbye when the celebration was over. He proposed a year later. The two of us were watching TV together. Without a lengthy speech or elaborate motions, he took a ring out of his pocket and declared, "Marry me," while gripping the ring so firmly I was afraid it would shatter. It was so flawlessly plain and a bit untidy that I laughed, not because it was humorous. "You big goof, of course," I said. At first, marriage didn't really change anything. It just felt natural. We were just legally married and exactly the same as before. We took up residence in my little flat in the heart of the city. However, it made a significant difference to have someone with whom to share the quiet times. Life seemed whole for the first time in a long time, and evenings no longer felt so lonely. Marriage provided some solace, but life may startle you just when you think you're established. From the beginning, Michael's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jacob, were amazing individuals. They opened their comfortable suburban house to me. Their generosity was a comfort to my still stunned heart after losing my own family, and I could understand where Michael got his easygoing demeanor. "We're so happy you're part of our family now," Mrs. Jacob would frequently say as she gave me a hard yet kind grip on my hand. "Thank you so much for making me feel so welcome," is what I would always say. We started hanging out with them on the weekends, enjoying lengthy conversations over steaming coffee and outdoor barbecues. Before it wasn't, life seemed straightforward, honest, and wonderful. For a year, Michael had to go out of state for employment. Although the timing wasn't perfect, it was a fantastic opportunity for his career. Mr. and Mrs. Jacob's health began to deteriorate shortly after he departed. Everything occurred so fast that one day Mrs. Jacob called and seemed very concerned. "We need your help, Anna," she replied in a shaky voice. "I apologize for troubling you, but things aren't going well. Mr. Jacob's condition is not good." I hastily gathered my belongings and made my way to their house. Seeing how weak they both appeared was painful. Having tubes for his treatment, Mr. Jacob, who had previously appeared so powerful, suddenly appeared tiny. I became accustomed to their routine, cooking and cleaning, while Mrs. Jacob concentrated on taking care of Mr. Jacob. I would read his favorite books to them in the evenings. Though his voice was weaker than previously, on good days he would gently remark, "Thank you, Anna," even though he would frequently nod off before I finished a chapter. I would console him by holding his hand while grinning and responding, "It's my pleasure." Mrs. Jacob was sitting at the kitchen table one day as I was making supper, and she appeared more worn out than normal. "Anna, I don't know how to say this, but we're having some problems," she began, trembling and wringing her hands. "The primary supplier, Mr. Jacob, is suddenly struggling." I set the knife down and focused entirely on her. "We're in a difficult place, sweetie. Would you think about leasing your apartment?" Mrs. Jacob looked down and added, "I hate to even ask, but maybe it will help us get through this tough time." She was obviously ashamed. I felt sad for them because of what she said, which demonstrated how dire their circumstances were. How could I say no to them after they took me in and made me family when I had no one else? I answered, "Of course, Mrs. Jacob," in an attempt to calm her concerns. "I will immediately take care of it." I immediately found someone to rent the flat, and I gave Mrs. Jacob the rent each month, plus extra for groceries and any expenses that weren't paid. On the worst days, I reminded myself that family is what keeps us together, despite the fact that my journey to work became a lengthy and exhausting drive. I could sense Mrs. Jacob's relief when she said, "You're a godsend, Anna," each time I handed her the money. Michael's calls were my sole solace. It seemed like a momentary getaway to hear his voice. "Jess, how are things going?" He would inquire, "Are you doing okay?" "We're managing," I would respond, forcing a grin into my voice over the static of long-distance talks. Not wishing to increase his concern, he said, "Don't worry about us." But when Shirley, Mrs. Jacob's daughter from her previous marriage, unexpectedly showed there, everything changed. Suddenly, like a chilly breeze creeping in, the atmosphere in the home changed. Though I didn't know her well, I had seen how tight things became during her short, uncomfortable visits and had heard plenty from Michael. Long commutes to work and caring for a bedridden and increasingly ill Mrs. Jacob were already causing me stress. However, the tension only increased with Shirley present. She settled in and stated unequivocally that she intended to stay. After a long, difficult day, Mr. Jacob pathetically invited me over one evening. He spoke in a low, unsteady voice. He said, "Anna, please watch Shirley. She is a bad person." My gut twisted at what he said. I was unsure of what to look out for, but I assured, "I understand, Mr. Jacob." Mr. Jacob was right when he said that Shirley quickly took over. The initial indications came rapidly. Shirley was in the kitchen one morning, standing like a thundercloud at the breakfast table. She drank her coffee and gave me a disapproving look. She stated, "Just to be clear, I'm not here to cook or be a maid for anyone." Despite my amazement, I maintained my composure. I tried to maintain the calm by saying, "All right, Shirley. I can continue to manage everything. So far, I have been doing it." "Good, since I have nothing to do." She said, "This is Mom's house," and challenged me to do so. Shirley made sure everyone knew she was there from that day on, and not in a good manner. She left the empty boxes for me to pick up after ordering takeout for only her and her mother. I remained silent despite the pain because Mr. and Mrs. Jacob deserved to be at peace. One evening, Mrs. Jacob remarked, "Anna, why don't you stay and eat with us tonight?" with a touch of her former warmth. But Shirley interrupted me before I could respond. "Mom, Anna has been really busy today." As if to protect me, she said, "I think she wants to eat later." I was obviously not welcome. My to-do list grew, and the day seemed to drag on forever. Shirley's attitude permeated the entire household. She was using harsh language to turn her against me, and I could hear her talking to her mother late at night. Mrs. Jacob, who had been so kind, gradually changed. She gave me fewer thanks, and her expression grew austere. Mr. Jacob died a few weeks after that. Just in time to say farewell, Michael took a plane to the funeral. It was a comfort to have him there, even if the entire affair was depressing. It was nice to have him at my side during such a trying moment, especially because we hadn't seen each other in months. I saw Shirley being almost too kind and courteous to everyone at the funeral. Michael and I got a minute to ourselves after the service. He said, "How have things been while I've been away?" "It's been all right." I forced a grin and responded, "Everything is okay." I didn't want to cause him more anxiety because he was already dealing with plenty. "Are you certain?" He looked at me worriedly and remarked, "You seem a bit tired." I tried not to look him in the eye and dismissed it by saying, "It's just been busy helping out around here." Bringing up all the issues that were simmering beneath the surface wasn't the appropriate moment. Shirley stopped pretending to be the protective sister when Michael departed. I had to cope with her impolite and disrespectful actions once more. The entire atmosphere of the house shifted. Mrs. Jacob seemed aloof and chilly toward me. Perhaps this was how she dealt with her loss. Our conversations turned into orders, and I started to feel less like part of the family and more like an outsider. Shirley took control of the house, acting like she was in charge. She didn't care about anyone's feelings but her own. She would even barge into my room without knocking and go through my things like she was searching for something. One day, I was trying to find some peace in the garden when I noticed a box hidden among the bushes. Curious, I opened it and found my lingerie, jewelry, and watches inside. My heart sank. When I saw some of my clothes tossed nearby, I was furious. I grabbed the box and stormed back inside. Shirley was lunging in the living room, acting like she owned the place. "What the hell, Shirley?" I shouted, my voice shaking with anger. "You can't just throw out my stuff." She gave a cold, mocking laugh. "Hannah, you don't live here. You're just a guest and you're not wanted. You'd be better off in the garden or on the street. You're nothing more than a beggar." Her words stung like salt on a wound. I felt my whole body tremble. I turned to Mrs. Jacob, who had just walked into the room. "Mrs. Jacob, please tell her she can't treat me like this. This is supposed to be my home, too." I pleaded, my voice cracking. But the once kind Mrs. Jacob looked at me like I was a stranger. "This is Shirley's home now. Maybe you should find somewhere else to stay." Her words hit me harder than I could have imagined. Standing there, holding the box, my heart pounded. In that moment, the home and family I thought I had fell apart. I stayed despite everything because I had made a promise to Mr. Jacob on his deathbed to take care of his wife and make sure Shirley didn't take over. But it felt like Mrs. Jacob was becoming more like Shirley every day. Her looks grew colder and her words harsher. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, Mrs. Jacob lost her temper. "What are you even doing here, just sitting around not helping?" she snapped, her voice full of contempt. I tried not to let her words get to me, but I still replied, "I'm doing my best to keep things running smoothly." "Best? More like you're just using everyone," she sneered before leaving the room. Her comments hurt. I had rented out my apartment and given almost all the money to Mrs. Jacob, so I knew I wasn't just freeloading. Besides, I did most of the chores while Shirley only complained and criticized. She was the one living off her mom's pension, yet she never let up. "What is my brother even seeing you?" She would taunt through the thin walls every night. I kept reminding myself of the promise I made to Mr. Jacob, biting my tongue to hold back my anger. But the house had become a hostile place, and I felt trapped. One evening, I came home early from work and sensed something felt off. They didn't know I was there, and as I walked into the living room, I heard Shirley and Mrs. Jacob arguing. "We need to make her sell her apartment," Shirley said, her tone cold and selfish. You know how much we could use that money." "Yes, but how do we convince her?" "Anna won't just give it up," Mrs. Jacob replied, sounding frustrated. "Mom, leave it to me. I'll gently force her to do it. We can finally live the life we deserve after she signs it over," Shirley continued, her words brimming with dishonesty. It was shocking to learn that they were planning to steal my only source of money. As I stealthily made my way to my room, my heart was racing. They want to rob me of everything. After that, it was obvious that I couldn't stay. I had to go. I hastily packed my belongings with unsteady hands. In that house, everything seemed like a ticking time bomb. They didn't deserve to be said farewell, so I didn't bother. I phoned a cab to drive me to the train station after sneaking out the back door. As I sat on the train to Michael's state, my thoughts were racing. I pondered if he would sympathize with them and comprehend. The unknown of what was ahead was just as terrible as the fear of what would happen if I stayed. I scanned the countryside as the train traveled, feeling both anxious and determined. Michael was shocked to see me standing there with my luggage when he opened the door to his flat. He appeared both relieved and inquisitive. "Michael, something is wrong." "Not at all," I said, my voice faltering as I expressed my concern. I followed him to the couch. "Talk to me, my love." "What's happening?" he begged. I filled him in on everything, including how Shirley had returned, how things had become worse at home, and the last straw, their scheme to force me to sell my flat. Prior to this, I didn't want to bother him while he was working, but now I let all out. Michael's expression darkened as I talked, his fists contracting and his jaw hardening. His voice was a mixture of wrath and concern by the time I was done. "Why didn't you tell me any of this before?" said the man. I didn't want to exacerbate the situation. I felt silly as I said, I thought I could handle it. "Anna, screw you." He got up and started to pace, saying, "You shouldn't have had to deal with that alone. I can't believe my mom and Shirley treated you like this." He came to a halt and gave me a nasty glare. "My wife is not treated this way by anyone." He took out his phone and stated, "No one." As I saw him call his mother, my heart was pounding. She hardly picked up the phone after it rang twice. Michael's shoulders were stiff, but I couldn't hear her side of the discussion. "This must end, Mom. I will not tolerate that since I am well aware of it. You can disregard our assistance if Shirley remains, or if you don't begin to treat Anna with dignity. No more cash." "Nothing," Michael stated in a stern and uncompromising tone. There was silence following a brief but contentious disagreement. Michael gripped the phone tightly. At last he responded, "All right. I've made my decision, if that's yours," and hung up. He turned to face me, and his face softened. He came over to give me a hug and said, "It looks like it's just us now, sweetie, but that's all we need." Leaning against him, I felt protected by his arms, which kept me secure from the mayhem. I said, "Just us," realizing he was correct. It seemed fine somehow, now that we were alone. We spoke about practical topics late into the night, including our budget, my work-from-home schedule, and what our lives would be like without having to deal with Shirley and his parents. It seemed like a new beginning. Just the two of us were embarking on a new chapter in our lives. No matter what, we're all in this together. You and I are the only ones against the world, right? I said. With a self-assured smile, Michael answered, "Right." I grinned back, feeling stronger with him at my side. The days that followed were hectic. Fortunately, when I asked, my supervisor agreed to let me work from home. We set up my home office in the corner of Michael's living room after he assisted me in moving my belongings out of storage. Although it wasn't flawless, it felt like ours and was comfortable. I felt like a ghost from the past when I received a call after a calm week. Mrs. Jacob was the one. Her once kind voice suddenly sounded aggressive and desperate at the same time. "Why haven't I gotten paid this month, Anna?" She seemed desperate as she replied, "You know how much we need it." I was momentarily silent. After everything, how could she have the audacity to ask this question? "I'm sorry, but after all that's happened, you really expect me to keep sending money?" More astonished than furious, I asked. In the background, Shirley's piercing voice could be heard stating, "She's just being selfish. Get her to send the funds." When Mrs. Jacob eventually exclaimed, "But we're family," she sounded both imploring and incensed. Yet I could imagine her looking distressed. "No, family doesn't treat each other like that," I firmly stated. Before she could respond, I said, "Goodbye, Mrs. Jacob," and hung up. I was shaken by the call, but Michael was there to console me. Putting his arm over my shoulders, he murmured, "You made the right choice, Anna. It's time they learned to take care of themselves." Soon later, we received a surprise. We learned what I had anticipated. The news was fantastic, and all of a sudden, the future appeared promising and full with opportunities. We made the decision that it was time for me to sell my apartment and purchase a modest suburban house close to a reputable school for our child's upbringing. Mrs. Jacob called again while we were organizing the transfer, but her voice was different this time. Her voice was nearly frantic. "I apologize for all of this. I had nothing left after Shirley stole the money and forced me to sell the house. Could I join you and Michael live?" I felt a shiver run down my spine at her plea, and I could hear her voice shaking. My determination was put to the test. "Mrs. Jacob, you took this course of action when you joined Shirley in opposing us. You could have made a different decision," I firmly stated. Despite my internal pain, I spoke quietly and tried to maintain a steady tone. "Mrs. Jacob, you have a kind heart, but everyone has to make decisions." I added, "I can't just forget what happened, even though I know you made mistakes." "Can't you forgive an old woman for her bad decisions?" she begged. I let out a sigh, recalling all the suffering her decisions had brought about while also feeling sad for her. "I have forgiven you, but that doesn't mean I can let you back into my life," I responded. "You have to live with the consequences of your actions, just like I have." After that, I blocked her number and hung up. We proceeded with our plans and purchased a modest, cozy home with a garden where our children could play. I was drinking my coffee and reading the newspaper carefully one sleepy Friday morning when I noticed the headline, "Local lady arrested for big fraud scheme." I saw a photo of Shirley in handcuffs and looked dejected. To be honest, I was a little relieved as well as shocked. As I held out the newspaper, I remarked, "Look at this, Michael. This is Shirley. She was sent into custody for fraud." With a serious attitude, Michael accepted the paper and read the tale. "That's a lot to process, wow. However, I can't claim to be shocked," he remarked. "She made her choices, and now she's facing the consequences." With a sense of finality I didn't realize I needed, I said. We later learned from acquaintances that Mrs. Jacob was living in a tiny apartment and working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Together with her other costs, Shirley's pension was insufficient to pay off the debt she left behind. "Have you heard about your mom?" One evening while they were around for a cookout, Michael's friend Em inquired. Michael said, "Yeah, I've heard," while he flipped burgers on the grill. His voice had a hint of melancholy, yet it was also resolute. "She made her choices, and this is the reality now," Em agreed. "I simply wanted to let you know." The evening continued after that as the talk turned to more lighthearted subjects like sports and business. Life, like us, had gone on. The happiness we experienced upon Megan's birth was immense. When I became a mother, everything changed. Our ambitions and objectives were altered, and some old scars were even healed with fresh love. Can you believe she's ours? One night, when Michael and I were watching Megan sleep in her cradle, I muttered. He wrapped his arm over my shoulders and said, "I know," in a kind manner. "She's perfect," he added in a soft voice. We marveled at every tiny thing Megan performed during the day, including her giggles and smiles. All of the negative memories seemed to vanish when she was around, leaving only positive ones. She was our little miracle. Simple yet full with little moments of happiness, each day gave our family a sense of fulfillment. Megan would attempt to chase butterflies while we laughed on our stroll in the park. We used to play games and read books at home on cold evenings. Michael and I became closer every day because of our love for our kid. Michael was at work one sunny day, and Megan and I were relaxing in the garden. With the lovely scent of roses in full bloom, I watched her play with her toys. A glimpse of the life we had created together. It was the ideal moment. Megan exclaimed, "Look, Mommy," while displaying a flower she had chosen. I smiled at her and said, "That's beautiful, sweetheart." I reflected on the path that had led us to this point. Despite the difficulties we had encountered, they brought us to this serene and joyful location. I was incredibly appreciative of Michael's love, support, and the strength we shared. Michael held my hand across the table when we sat down to supper that night. His eyes were full of affection as he remarked, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "We have," I said, firmly grasping his hand, "and I wouldn't change a thing." With optimism and confidence, we looked to the future, believing that we could overcome any obstacles as a team. Our family was strong, our love was unshakable, and our hearts were full of pleasure. In order to create a life full of love, joy, and limitless opportunities, we made sure to treasure each day.